Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first webinar on the South and East Network for Social Sciences. It is the first webinar we deliver this year uh, to discuss competitions and the opportunities we have for students and applicants to pursue doctoral studies with funding from the South and East Network for Social Sciences. I am Fragkiskos FIlippaios. I am the director for the South and East Network, and I'm also a professor of international business at the University of Essex. I will be leading today's webinar and answering any potential questions you might have. Just before we start, there are a couple of things in terms of housekeeping. The first thing is I will be allowing questions as we go through the webinar to basically ask anything that is not clear or ask additional questions. I will also be recording the webinar. So for those of you that you would like to subsequently review the material, review certain things that I've said, the webinar will be available online through our YouTube channel in the next few days. Usually it takes a couple of days for us to upload the webinar, and the link will also be on the website, on the SENSS website. And the other item of housekeeping is that around an hour and a half into the webinar, members of the student committee will join me. And what I will do is I will remove myself from the webinar. We will stop the recording and we will allow a safe space for you to ask any additional questions you might have with regards to SENSS, the way we operate, the way we make decisions and everything like that. So I thought that was going to be a good opportunity for everyone to be able to actually have some additional understanding of what SENSS stands for and who we are and what we do. Bear with me, we are currently experiencing quite a substantial number of participants. So if you post your question on the chat or the Q&A, I will try to pick them up and respond to them as we go along. But without any further ado, let me tell you a bit about what I will be covering today. I will start, excuse me, saying a few words on why to do a PhD. And there, I will provide some guidance in terms of the motivation letter, the personal statement we ask. So perhaps as I go through the information, you could think about what is your motivation for pursuing a PhD. I will then focus a bit on SENSS and who we are, what we do, what kind of funding do we offer. And then two important aspects which I think are crucial in submitting a successful application. The first one is finding a supervisor, and the second one is writing a proposal. And at that point, what I will do is I will tell you a bit more about how we evaluate proposals and what we do, so you could get an understanding and a sense of how do we actually look at proposals, what are the criteria, and what are the expectations from a good proposal. So that's the outline. I'm hoping I will cover everything in the next hour and a half. So let's start by the first question that a lot of you, given the significant interest you might have in your minds. Why do a PhD? And I appreciate that in the past, the PhD was what we call an academic qualification, wasn't a qualification that was effectively preparing people for a career in academia. That has radically changed, and it has radically changed over the years for two reasons. Because first of all, there is a significant diversity of people, of candidates that pursue a PhD, and each one of those candidates has different motivations, different thoughts, ideas why they want to do a PhD, but also because the academic world is no longer a world that has abundant opportunities, a world that everybody can find a job, but it has relatively limited opportunities at the moment, especially in the UK. So a lot of our doctoral researchers, they pursue a PhD not only because they want to satisfy their interest, but because also they want to develop skills, competences, capabilities that allow them to pursue careers not only within academia, but also outside academia. And in reality, these common assumptions, as Nerad et al. Have put them in 2009 in their paper, where students that obtain PhDs, they all want to become professors, and the best doctoral students then become professors, and there is a very linear path between, PhD to assistant professor, associate professor, and professor. They no longer hold. A lot of the PhDs are effectively leaving the academic world post the submission of the thesis. And what they do is they go and work for research organizations, they go and work in policy-oriented functions of the government, and they apply the skills they have developed through the PhD to those roles. In our case, it is an ESRC requirement that all our students, every single one of our PhD funded students, will have to undertake a compulsory placement. We have a team that looks after placements. And what we will do is we will work with you if you don't have a placement or a potential collaborative partner in mind already to secure a placement for you. So 3 months during the period of your PhD, you will stop your PhD studies and you will go and work for that partner organization, applying your skills, learning new skills, and potentially given the opportunity, you will be given the opportunity to implement some of your research findings in a real world based practice. So it's quite crucial to give you that information in advance and say that no matter what your purpose is, and people might come here for instrumental purposes, because they want to pursue a career in the academia or a research career. Your intellectual purposes, it might be your personal interests, you might be drawing satisfaction from pursuing a PhD, or you are eager to contribute to the discipline, or sometimes people come with altruistic purposes. We have several students coming from the global south that have identified issues in the global south, and they take those issues forward to an academic context to find solutions. And these PhDs solve problems, enable change, and benefit others. No matter what your purpose is, and it could be one of those or all of them, it's quite important to understand that we will prepare you not only for an academic career, but also should you wish to pursue a career outside the academia. And I mentioned earlier the personal statement, and it's actually quite useful to understand that this kind of information is the information we would like to find out in the personal statement. I'll say a few words about the personal statement later on, but this is quite crucial, quite important for us to see what is your motivation, why you want to do the PhD, why you want to effectively pursue a funded PhD. I've got 2 questions so far. I can pick them up here before I move on to the next kind of part of the presentation, which is making sense of SENSS. The first question, and I apologize, I will be reading the questions for the purposes of the recording. If this pathway is open to both research and doctorates, the answer is there is no funding for doctorates. I assume you might be referring to a doctorate in business administration, a DBA, or a professional doctorate that has a taught part. The answer is no. Here we're talking about only research-based PhDs. The program is open to students where the PhD is jointly, where one university is included in the SENSS program and the other is not. No, you will have to be based at the SENSS university only in order to pursue the PhD. So the host institution could potentially take you fully on board, but it's not a funding that usually covers co-tutels or things like that. Second question is, do we have to indicate preference of where they wish to do their placement in the proposal? And for international students specifically, can the placement be in their home country in Africa? The answer is you will have to indicate. If you don't have an organization, and I'll talk a bit about the placement later on, if you don't know the organization, what we expect you to demonstrate is you have given some consideration, some thought about the potential characteristics of the organization you would like your placement. And that helps also the team to source occasional placements. Now, placements according to the SRC rules have to be predominantly based in the UK. So international placements are usually by exception. That being said, it's something that we can look at whether that placement is really important for career purposes and whether we can support an international placement. The prerequisites indicate that applicants should hold an undergraduate degree and they have an MSc in family therapy. The MSc is a professional qualification, not academic oriented, which means that there is limited postgraduate research experience. That is not a problem. Actually, the new terms and conditions from UKRI, the United Kingdom Research Council's organization, stipulate that in certain occasions there might not even a need for an undergraduate degree. What happens for those of you that we feel you need additional training? As part of your application, you will be asked to do what we call a development needs analysis. We will ask you to tell us your prior studies, what you have done, how much you have covered, and potentially identify those gaps. And what then happens subsequently to that is we change the amount of the award between 3.5 and 4.5 years to provide you with time to do that additional training. That additional training can take, for example, a full master's year again, and it could be Vivian, a master's in research methods, or it could be specific modules that perhaps we feel are more appropriate for your training and for your PhD. So it's not a problem, your prior qualifications, because we have the flexibility to award different times and different kind of durations, lengths of the degree. So there is no consideration to the starting point apart from us ensuring that we give you, as part of the funding, enough time to cover your gaps in the research methods. So from that point of view, everyone is eligible. If we have started our PhD as self-funded, can we apply your second year? The answer is yes, you can apply. The only condition the SRC puts here is that you have to have, by the time you start, at least 50% left of your current PhD. So effectively, if you started in October this year, by the time you start your PhD next October through SENSS, you will have done 1 year out of the 3. That's absolutely fine. If you started in January 2025 and you effectively considering the October 26 start, it's a bit trickier. We need to calculate specifically whether you've got enough time left in your PhD. And I need to say is that the funding you will be receiving is funding that will cover the remaining part of the PhD, not the full PhD. As an international student, how accounting and finance be part of the stated pathways? That's something that you can discuss with your supervisor, and it's related to the project itself and which of the pathway the project is targeting, which of thematic areas the project is targeting. So I can't answer that question unless I see, the proposal. For someone applying to SENSS for a second time, are there any limitations when they get reviewed by the same panel? No, there are no. Actually, the panel, unless they remember the proposal, they won't have information that this is a resubmission of a prior application. So it's effectively everything is considered as a first submission. I will stop here with the questions and move on a bit about talking about SENSS. So I'll start by saying who we are. We are one of the ESRC doctoral training partnerships. The ESRC is one of the 7 research councils in the UK, and effectively there are 15 doctoral training partnerships like us as another 14 to be precise, and the link there takes you straight to the ESRC website that effectively has the information. You can effectively apply to as many doctoral training partnerships as you like. There is no kind of limit. You can apply to all 15 DTPs, should you like. You can apply to SENSS and CDARC, which is the other doctoral training partnership that covers areas of the Southeast. And but you can only make one application per doctoral training partner. So if you decide to apply through SENSS, you can only select one institution and one institution only and apply through that institution. We can't allow you, for example, to apply through Essex and East Anglia and City and Goldsmiths. You need to select the institution and apply through that institution. And what we do is, using this funding, we award studentships and postdoctoral fellowships. So overall, there are about 500 to 600 studentships throughout all the DTPs. In our case, we offer roughly around 40 studentships every year. The last 2 years, we were able to offer in 2023, 42, and in 2024, 40 studentships. Just to put this into context, which I think is quite important, 2 important points to remember here. One is that the 40 studentships are the outcome of approximately 700 applications. We receive every year roughly 700 applications from PhD students. And also, out of those 40 studentships, only 12 to 13 are open to international students. We have to operate a quota, which is imposed by the SRC. It's not our decision. It's a 30% quota by the SRC on the cohort. And therefore, the competition is far more intense when it comes to international applicants. And I need to say that very clearly in order to manage the expectations that if you are an international applicant, you have to go through a far more intense competition process, in the sense that the places are limited for international candidates, whilst they're not limited for home students. So if you are an international candidate, bear in mind that you will only be competing for 12 to 13 places out of those 40. We offer a very innovative doctoral training kind of environment, very interdisciplinary. You will have access to the training across the 8 institutions. We have a large network of external organizations that we source placements from. We have a strong partnership with Sage, the publisher, and Sage offers the Sage campus. We offer, as part of the funding, opportunities for overseas visits, fieldwork, conferences, funding for conferences, and of course, all that is encapsulated in our virtual learning environment, which everyone has access to. Every single student, funded and non-funded, from those 8 institutions can register for the VLE and get information and get access to all the material. Let me pick up a few more questions, given I've seen quite a few questions here. There is a question about full-time and part-time of the PhD. If you're talking about the full-time PhD, we're talking about 37 hours per week. And the part-time can be anything up to 50% part-time. So you could do your PhD at work for 17 hours on your PhD and 17 hours in another organization outside the academic environment. If we apply for ESRC funding for MSc and DPhil in non-SENSS university, can I also apply for SENSS? Yes, I think I've answered that already. You can make as many applications as you like across the 15 doctoral training partnerships. So SENSS, we will be asking you whether you've applied elsewhere, but that makes no difference to the decision-making process. If you're an international applicant already based in the UK, unless you have, so home candidates are those that obviously are of British citizenship, European Union candidates that have settled or pre-settled status, and international applicants that have indefinite leave to remain. So these three groups are effectively groups that we consider home candidates. Anyone else is an international applicant. The IELTS is not mandatory and there is no minimum requirement. It might be upon admission for your institution, but it's not, we don't test any English language qualifications or anything like that when it comes to the SENSS competition. Just to visualize this one, SENSS as an organization does not award the PhD. What we do is we provide the funding to do the PhD. The organization that awards the PhD is one of the 8 partner institutions, one of the 8 universities that form SENSS. And therefore, the home institution is the one that does the eligibility checks and the admission criteria. This is where you will need to probably submit your transcripts, your references, and everything like that. At the SENSS, and the institution will then decide whether they will put you forward to the competition. But in order to do that, you will need to apply for SENSS funding as well. So from a SENSS point of view, we judge the proposals on the basis of the information we get through the application, and we don't ask you to upload any material in that application. That is something that it will be requested at the home institution. The copy of the webinar, as I said, it will be available online on YouTube in the next couple of days, together with the presentation slides. So who's whom in terms of SENSS? Moving on, we are a small but very vibrant team. I'm the director, so what I do is I oversee the competitions. I tend to sit on the selection panels. We have a deputy director, Professor Mark Johnson, who's based at Goldsmiths, and he's responsible for training. And together with the training and development manager, Jenny Wilders, they will be looking after you once you become SENSS students. So effectively, until you become SENSS students throughout the competition, I will have the responsibility. Once you become SENSS students, I hand over that responsibility to Mark and Jenny to look after your training needs. We've got a manager, Dr. Felicity Sesnat, who looks after the studentships, the funding aspects, and then we've got our finance manager who works very closely with Felicity, and Sarah makes sure that the payments to the universities, so they can pay your stipend and your fees, are there. And then the two people that are predominantly responsible for the competitions from an admin point of view is Rachel Layton-Jones and Aaron Archer. And I have the contact details of Aaron at the end of the presentation, and I'll tell you how to judge who to contact in that team. Now, as organization, we are structured in what we call 6 thematic panels. We don't have disciplines. We don't look at applications from an economics, psychology, sociology, socio-legal, social anthropology perspective. We say that every project should be talking to one of those themes. And the way those themes were developed was, what we did is we took the Sustainable Development Goals, we looked at the ESRC priorities, and then we looked at the strengths of the 8 partners. And by putting those things together, we came up with those 6 themes that each one has, a very clear description of what it stands for, and you can find that information on the website. I will actually show you in a minute those descriptions, a summary of those descriptions. So we've got sustainability and climate emergency, which deals with issues around sustainability, climate issues. We've got health, well-being, and social care, justice institutions and social change, resolving uncertainty and addressing crisis, digital social sciences, and then the advanced methods in social and economic research. None of those is superior to the others. And there is no quota for studentships allocated. So the competition is open to all topics, through all thematic areas, through all institutions. There is no specific allocation of studentships to pathway number 1 or pathway number 2. And one of the important things to remember here and keep an eye on is that if you wish to apply to one of those themes, the institution you're applying through has to be part of those themes. Now, as you can see from this table, the vast majority of institutions participate in the vast majority of thematic areas, with the exception of Cranfield, which does not participate in health, well-being, and advanced social methods, Lincoln, which does not participate in the advanced methods, and Middlesex, which does not participate in digital social sciences. All other pathways are open to all institutions. And I said that I will show you the summaries that we've created. So what I did over the last year is I've worked with the thematic leads and the thematic chairs, and we came up with summaries for each of those thematic areas. So I've got here the advanced methods for social and economic research. It gives you a sense of what kind of topics wishes to attract, talks about interdisciplinarity in the context of this thematic area, and also looks at the diversity of approaches. Each of those thematic areas on the website, and I cannot stress enough the importance of visiting the website. The website had roughly 100,000 individual visits last year. It's fantastic. It contains information on anything you would like to find out, all the videos from webinars and things like that. But also what we've done now is we've created thematic web pages. So each of the themes has its own web page with a description of the theme, as well as the universities that participate and the previous projects that we have funded in that specific theme. So if you are contemplating which theme shall I go and apply to, you will find all the information that you need through the thematic pages. So each of the themes has exactly the same description. You know, what does digital social sciences stands for, and what does it kind of topics it attracts, what does health, well-being, and social care stands for, and what kind of topics. So for each one of the 6 themes, you will find exactly all that information in the on the website. So it's quite crucial and important, as I said, to go onto the website and review that that material. So I'll go through those just to highlight that they exist for everyone. Now, let me pick up a couple of questions here before moving on to the application. There is one question about special reservation support for disabled applicants in the application stage, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So I'll reserve that question because I will talk about specific groups that we give them priority in the application. The detailed coverage of the funding, I will come back to that, but roughly speaking, the funding covers a stipend. The stipend is just over £22,000 for a year. The funding covers fees, irrespective of whether you are an international or home student. You will get all your fees covered, and it will also cover additional funds for conferences. There is a pot of money which is called Research Training Support Grant, and it's roughly £3,500 throughout the duration of your PhD that you can then use flexibly to attend conferences. So that's the kind of funding we offer. Can you move from part-time to full-time and vice versa? The answer is yes. And ESRC has given us greater flexibility to do that over the years. So the decision is an application you make, and the decision lies with SENSS. So the answer is yes. For someone who has lived in the UK for 3 years, do they qualify as a home student? That's a very specific eligibility type of criterion, which perhaps, as I said, unless you have, if you're an international student, unless you have indefinite leave to remain, then you could consider yourself a home student. But that's something that it will be tested at the application stage at the university. Once you do the application at the university, they will tell you exactly in which category you will be. If I were to pursue the 4.5 year combined, could I do my MSc at one university and my PhD at the different university, or do both universities have to be SENSS universities? No, you would not. We will only fund master studies if we feel that they are required, and we will only fund master studies that are taking place within a SENSS institution. Can the proposal connect to more than one theme? It can, but in reality, what we ask you to select one theme, because this is the theme and this is the route that then the proposal will take to be evaluated. Each proposal gets evaluated by a cross-institution thematic panel. If your topic is interdisciplinary, of course, you can decide which area you think it fits well. This is usually a decision that you take with your supervisor. You don't take on your own. Your supervisor should be able to guide you in which thematic area you should be applying. I didn't, there is a question whether candidates supposed to cover all the aspects of contents, SDGs and ESRC priorities in terms of the proposal. The answer is no. You select which SDGs, you select which priorities are important for your topic. We don't expect proposals to tackle everything. We expect proposals actually to be focused on specific areas. Can you apply for funding on part-time basis and still have a full-time job? The answer is straightforward, no. If you apply for part-time funding, we would expect you to do a part-time job, not a full-time job. So it's really important to have that. Some universities have two dates to apply. Can we apply at any stage and then apply to SENSS? I'll come to that in a minute, Vivian. But the important thing is that individual institutions set their own deadlines for applying for SENSS funding through that institution. Then there is a single application deadline that covers SENSS funding. That's the funding application. And that single application deadline is Wednesday, the 14th of January. All institutions should have deadlines for applications either on that date or before that date. So if you're thinking of applying to one of the SENSS partners, check, because some institutions might have much earlier deadlines than SENSS. So the SENSS deadline is not for the PhD. The SENSS deadline is for applications for funding through SENSS. I assume you only apply to SENSS once you've been successfully securing a place at your home institution. So there is then the deadline for PhD at Goldsmiths, which is the 12th of January. The SENSS studentship is on the 22nd of January. Is this enough time for Goldsmiths to give me an answer? So the SENSS deadline is 14th of January, not 22nd of January. And what the requirement is here is not to hold an offer, but to have made an application to the home institution. So we don't expect you to hold the offer to apply for SENSS. We expect you to at least have initiated the process of applying to one of the 8 institutions. And we say that because throughout your application, you will be required, SENSS application, you will be required to request a supervisory statement. So unless you've gone through the process of the home institution, you won't be able to secure that supervisory statement in time. But I'll explain a bit more of the process now, because that's the next part of the presentation. So there are three steps to make an application. The first one is apply for a PhD place at your home institution. And I can't stress enough here, check the individual institution for dates. Create the HApply account, which you can find through the SENSS website, and then develop your proposal with your supervisory team and submit your online application. Crucial here in this process is effectively finding a supervisor. It's really, really important to think about finding the right supervisor, because they play a dual role. First of all, they guide you through the proposal and the development of the proposal. B, they will have to write in support of your application as part of your application. And I know it sounds strange here, but what we expect supervisors to do is provide a supporting statement for the students, the topic and the application, and to demonstrate in that supporting statement how themselves they can also engage with supervision in that particular area. And that supporting statement, together with your application, gets reviewed by the thematic panel. So in reality, supervisors actually are an integral part of your application. They're not a side kind of, it's not a side effort, it's really, really important. There are several ways you can identify supervisors. Some of you might have already worked with potential supervisors through your master's dissertation. If you don't know generally who's doing what, you could always visit Google Scholar. One of the important things here is that on the website, we have for each of the students their existing supervisors. So you could read the potential topics that supervisors, and you can potentially submit applications, ideas to those individuals that are named on the website. And that doesn't suggest that you shouldn't be looking outside that group of people. But what I'm saying here is that on the website, there is at the moment roughly about 80 students with the names of their supervisors, with the topics that they're currently exploring. And those might be the first point of contacts for you to secure supervisors. Equally, you could go through your institution and or the potential institution you might want to apply to. So people might want to apply through Essex, through East Anglia, and find appropriate supervisors through the institutional web pages. Once you've done that, it's really, really important to communicate with them as early as possible. Don't leave it till the last minute. Write them an email, address them properly, tell them something interesting about yourselves, explain why you've selected them, how your research proposal fits with their expertise, and don't make any extravagant claims. I've read all your papers and I've been really inspired by your work. Prepare yourselves for a face-to-face interview. Think of questions they might ask you. What I usually do is when I receive a proposal from any student, I have a very quick, short, informal chat with them. I give them some initial feedback on their proposal and then have that chat with them to find out whether, we can work together. It's a relationship. You need to build that relationship. You need to cultivate that relationship with the supervisor. I'm not suggesting it's an easy task, but I'm suggesting it's a task that is crucial for the application process, as these individuals, your supervisory team will have to support your application through SENSS. Let me pick up a few more questions here, and then we'll move on to writing a strong proposal. I already have a PhD offer from a hosting institution to start in January. Can I still apply for SENSS? The answer is yes. And what will happen is you can start your PhD in January, and we will then offering you funding for the remaining, if you get funded, if you get selected, we will be offering you funding for the remainder of the PhD period. And it has happened in several cases that where students have started their PhD, they didn't want to defer their start, and then they moved to the funding phase, and the support from SENSS kicked in once the cohort starts, which is in October 2026. Can I apply in Middlesex University for October 26 intake and now for SENSS in January 26? So you will apply for October 26 intake for the institution. The funding from SENSS will also start from October 2026. So the SENSS funding starts at the point where you get admitted to the institution. So if someone, for example, is admitted now and they start the PhD in January 2026, they go through this year's competition, they are successful, they find in April that we will be offering them funding. What's happening is in October 26, their funding will kick in. So they will have to fund themselves, self-funded students for the first 8 months, 10 months, and then the funding will kick in from October 26 for the remainder period of their PhD. If my proposal is based on qualitative methodology but not quantitative, does that impact on the selection process? No, there is no consideration. I'll say a few words about quantitative versus qualitative, but it's what we look at is whether the methodological approach proposed is robust. I'm completing my master's degree in May 2026. Am I eligible for SENSS funding? Yes, you are eligible for SENSS funding. You can apply as long as you apply now. And we don't, as I said, at the SENSS level, we don't test prior qualifications or anything like that. How many supervisors do we have to contact? And if we do interdisciplinary quantitative research, how do we have to contact another supervisor from the selected field? Now, usually, you could be very selective with how many supervisors you contact. I'd say don't send the email to more than 5 or 6 individuals across the different institutions. Wait, that's the first wave, wait for responses and then come back. If you don't have any positive responses, find a few more. And what I suggest to do is I suggest you focus on securing the first supervisor, the primary supervisor at this stage. And they, once you secure them, they will be able to guide you to the remaining process in order to secure a secondary supervisor. They might have someone they currently work with and they can make that suggestion. Is there any limitation for the subject, object, or location of the research proposal? No, it's not limited to the UK. It's the proposal can have any geographical context. The proposal can have any subject. The only condition, which is very clearly described on the website, is that the proposal should be at least 50% embedded in social sciences. And that's an ESRC requirement because otherwise the ESRC won't fund the proposal. So it has to be embedded in social sciences. It has to be a social sciences question that you're answering, you're trying to answer throughout the PhD. Otherwise, you won't be funding. Otherwise, there are other alternative funders like the EPSRC or the Arts and Humanities Research Council that will be funding your project. There is a very specific question about supervisory training and whether the secondary supervisor will be completing training in January. Any supervisor can apply through SENSS, so you could rely on any supervisor. What we ask them to do is we either ask them to demonstrate they've undergone training the last 3 years or to commit that they will be undergoing training in the future. So there is no, it's not a substantial barrier there if they haven't done any training, especially if they're an early career researcher. We will be offering us SENSS training as well. I'm moving on to the important part here, which is the strong proposal, because this is the core of SENSS and the SENSS application. And I'll just say a few words about writing a strong proposal. The first thing I would do is I would be inspired by existing projects. On the website, we've got all the projects that have received funding, and you will find information about the student, you will find information about the theme, you will find information about the university, you will see the supervisors, you will see the title of the project. My intention here is not to separate the examples I'm giving you, but just to highlight that the variety of projects we're supporting. So if you look at BBEX project is going back to the subject location, park people and pressures, evaluating protected areas and community forest governance model effectiveness for conservation and well-being in Nepal. Project dealing with the Global South. Deborah is doing a project, what we call a collaborative project. She's doing the project with Scottish Water, and it's a project based at Cranfield, community-based co-design of small-scale wastewater systems. Mazen as well. He's doing a project with Cadent Gas, one of the biggest gas providers in the UK, and he's looking at the hydrogen towns and the potential of hydrogen towns. Gemma is based at City, St. George's, looking at the digital radiographer leaders and how leadership should be shaped with the implications of AI in radiography. Kwame is at University of East Anglia, looking at climate and social injustices in sub-Saharan Africa, specifically focusing on the case of Benin. Morgan, again, at the East Anglia, more on sound asleep, understanding the real-world applications of auditory sleep stimulation. Holly, again, in digital social sciences, an exploration of the disconnects between the relationships and sex education policy and young people's experiences of post-digital relationships and sex education in England. You will see there Lottie at Roehampton, looking at developing a culturally informed antenatal participatory music intervention for maternal mental health. Natalie at Goldsmiths, navigating economic precarity, female asylum seekers in London and the pursuit of for employment rights. Samuel at Essex, transnational study of humanitarian exodus, the skilling of highly skilled professionals, the case of Hong Kong sports migrants in the United Kingdom, and Dominic at Lincoln, a novel neurofeedback protocol to improve sleep health and learning. So this is just a small sample of the topics we are offering and the topics we are funding. These students have come forward with those topics. They have gone through a robust process. But my suggestion is be inspired by the work of others. Look at the type of topics have received funding over the last few years. We've got now 2 cohorts, that 80 students that have received funding. All their information in terms of the titles, their abstracts is on the website. So the main SENSS competition attracts approximately 30 studentships. The remaining studentships are allocated to the collaborative competition. I will have a separate webinar on that in November. The collaborative competition is a supervisor-driven competition. So we will be advertising in November 8 projects for studentships, but these are projects developed by supervisors specifically. As I said, it's open to home and international applicants, but with the ESRC quota. There are ring-fenced awards for Cranfield, Lincoln, and Middlesex. So each one has one ring-fenced award. So we will be allocating one studentship to candidates coming from Cranfield, Lincoln, or Middlesex. And the submission for the SENSS proposals is Wednesday, 14th of January, 2026. Greenwich Mean Time, noon. It's not 12 o'clock in your home zone. That's something that I always stress. It's the 12 o'clock in Greenwich Mean Time. This is when the application platform shuts and no additional applications are permitted. So please translate that to your home country zone, time zone, so you don't to avoid any kind of disappointment. Once we've got all the applications, there are 2 stages, the institutional shifting. So the institution you have applied to, it is doing an initial sifting and it can nominate you. If they decide not to nominate you, they will give you feedback. And if they decide to nominate you, you move on to what we call the thematic panel sifting, which is a cross-institutional evaluation. And at that point, what happens is panels evaluate proposals. If you are successful at that stage, you are moved to the management board stage. If you're unsuccessful, you will be receiving feedback from SENSS on your application. And the candidates that are nominated are selected by the management board. Usually the management board meets early in April. So at the end of the first week of April, you will know whether you have received funding for the next year. As I said earlier in one of the questions, the length of the award will be determined by a development needs analysis. So we look at every individual application and we say this application requires a bit more time or this application requires less time. The minimum is 3.5 years, the maximum is 4.5 years. Usually this is reserved for candidates that come straight from their undergraduate studies. If you have already started your PhD, the minimum will be adjusted accordingly. And the funding includes an integrated placement of up to 3 months. So within the 3.5 years, the 3 months are included. And then it can include an overseas institutional visits, difficult language training, and or fieldwork, which get separate extensions. So if in your application you decide to do fieldwork, that comes with a separate extension. If you decide to do fieldwork in an area of the world where you don't speak the language and you need to learn the language, you get an additional extension. So all these are things that you need to be discussing specifically with your supervisor in shaping the proposal. And in addition to the stipend and the fees that I mentioned already, you access the research training support grant, which is roughly £3,500 throughout the duration of the award. Just to stress some of that information again, you don't need a master's. You could be eligible even if you have professional experience or an undergraduate degree and relevant professional experience. We offer all studentships on a full or part-time basis. You can switch from one to the other. All studentships are fully funded regardless of your fee status. So if you're an international student, the home institution will waive your fees completely. They won't be asking you to pay the difference between the home and the international fees. And there are 4 important stages. Check your eligibility with your home institution, apply to that university, discuss with the supervisor, apply for a place at that university in discussion with the supervisor, and then apply for the SENSS studentship, which is the funding part. And as I said, check the deadline of your selected institution. It might be different from the 14th of January that applies for SENSS. One application permitted only, so you need to be very careful which institution you select to apply to in order to get your position. Let me take a couple of questions here. As I got selected for PhD in the field of arbitration, am I eligible to apply for SENSS funding? I think the answer is possibly yes, but I don't know, because you need to tell me which institution, which area. I think that's something that you can discuss with your supervisor. You've already got selected for a PhD, so I think you can discuss with your supervisor and you can let them know that I would like to apply for SENSS funding, and they should be able to guide you through. If the proposal is rejected, do we get any feedback on how to improve or what is the reason for rejection? The answer is yes. Feedback you receive from your institution if you get rejected on the institutional phase, from SENSS if you get rejected at the SENSS phase. Someone is an international applicant who applied for SENSS but rejected. Feedback was received in July and was encouraged. The answer is yes, you can make, and the question is, can I make the necessary corrections as observed by the panel reapply using the same proposal? The answer is yes. You can make the corrections and apply again with the same proposal. And the proposal is on policy reform for mental and emotional health of students, and I chose the health, well-being, and social care theme. I think, yes, that's probably the most appropriate, without having to see, having seen the full proposal. I think that's probably, yes, the most appropriate thematic area. Moving on with the presentation, and I know that we will be joined by members of the student committee at some point. There are several areas where applications come with a slight advantage, and I'd like to highlight those. First of all, is applications that come with widening participation criteria. We have certain criteria. The information is available on the website, exactly which areas we consider. But for example, if you come from a particular ethnic background, having grown in a less affluent area, having a disability, being in a carer, having been in care as a child, if you are a home candidate, those apply to you. And what usually happens, we ask you to indicate in the equals opportunities form. You have to submit an equal opportunities form once you submit your application. And what we do is we reserve a number of studentships for applicants coming from these backgrounds. Just to give you an example, SENSS has two ring-fence ring-fence studentships for candidates coming from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. So Black and ethnic minority candidates that reach the management board stage get ring-fence access to those ring-fence studentships, irrespective of the order in which they are in the management board list. We also have certain areas that we would like to encourage. One is data skills, and the other one is advanced quantitative methods. So we've got 6 studentships for those 2 areas, 3 for data skills and 3 for advanced quantitative methods. On the website, we have very clear information on what constitutes data skills, what constitutes AQM. There are 2 documents that give you very clear guidance. So you've got that information there. And again, those projects will get selected before we select anyone else. So they get priority in the selection. If you identify that you are a data skills project or a project that has advanced quantitative methods. Right, before I move on to writing a strong proposal, I've got someone raised their hand, so I'm happy to Tumim, if you want to come on mic and raise your hand and ask your question. Yes, you've got a question?
Okay, can you hear me now, please?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good afternoon. The slide that you just presented right now about the ADM and data skills, is that restricted? Is that a methodology for all themes, or that's restricted to the advanced research theme?
Very good question. No, they are applicable for all themes. So you could have a theme in health, well-being, and social care, which uses advanced quantitative methods, and therefore you can select, as you submit your application, we will ask you to tick a box and say, my project uses advanced quantitative methods, or my project uses data skills. So for example, in health, well-being, and social care, I have seen projects using administrative data research data sets, which are large data sets, and therefore they are eligible. So a very good question. They are open to proposals from all themes.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've got Chikodili. Yes, yes.
Okay, good afternoon, sir. Thank you
Hello.
so much for this opportunity, and thank you for the information section. It's really helping. I have a question on my research proposal, the methodology. My proposal is a mixed method, a bit of qualitative analysis and a bit of quantitative analysis. So I don't know if I should though I'm working with data sets like the policy, I'm working on policy reform for education, particularly the mental and emotional health of students in the secondary school section. Though I'm working with just 3 schools in one of the states in Nigeria. So if I'll be working on that topic, could I also tick the advanced quantitative method section during my application?
I would 2 points here. Usually supervisors are very well placed to give you a final answer, but given that you're using mixed methods, unless you have a very advanced methods in analyzing and collecting your quantitative data, then I wouldn't see how a mixed method proposal would be able to tick the advanced quantitative methods. Am I clear in what I'm saying? But as I said, I don't want to say no, because the supervisor will be the last person that can tell you that yes or no in that tick.
Okay.
The process here is it's relatively liberal. So we allow you to tick the box, but then what what we do is we ask you, and I'll come to that in a minute, we ask you in a section of the research proposal to justify why you tick that box.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I think I will redirect the question to my supervisor, and hopefully he will give me a good answer that would help. I have another question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. In the course of my application last year, I came across a question where I was asked to discuss my intellectual abilities, I think, if I remember clearly. And from the feedback I got, I was told to talk more on my experience. I'm a bachelor's degree holder who love research. Though
Okay.
I have only I concluded just one research with my bachelor's degree, which was more like a quantitative analysis. Currently, I do more of review, literature review, narrative review, and I'm currently trying to publish some of my papers, at least 2 of them. Could I use that as an experience, or could that stand in for experience for which I should be given this opportunity?
No, I think what you described is a very good example, which shows also development. I think what we need to see is development. The other thing that a lot of people bring into that question in terms of their answer is the professional experience you have. So, for example, right now you're doing, this project with secondary schools in Nigeria. You could talk a bit about this project specifically, and what you've done and everything like that. This is more about to give us confidence that you are the right person to fulfill the proposal you have submitted.
Okay. Okay, yes. In regards to that, I think I didn't mention during my last application, I run an NGO, and we do more of reaching out to students. Teenage mental and emotional health is a core focus of the NGO. So what we do most of the time is we visit rural schools, encourage and try to to imbibe in the students the call for resilience, academic resilience, because we have a record. We notice that most students in the rural area are giving up on education because of the financial constraints and other factors that are contributing to the poverty rate in that area. So what we do is we visit these schools, we encourage the students.
Chikotili, if I may interrupt for the interest of time, I think what you described there is a very good example. It's important to articulate that in the application.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Ake.
I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Ake.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello. I have just 2 quick questions. So the first one is, I read on the application, well, on the information that we can apply for part-time and full-time, as you said earlier. So I just wanted to know how many hours is the part-time and how many hours is the full-time. And then my second question is regarding the 3-month placement. I have my own award-winning organization working in the anti-trafficking sector, and I'm working with the EU and the Home Office. So I just wanted to know whether for the 3-month I can do the 3-month with my own organization, or is a no-no.
So in terms of the full-time, part-time, full-time is usually 37 hours. The part-time can be up to 50%. So the minimum requirement the SRC will ask you to commit on the PhD is to be 50% part-time on the PhD. You can't go lower than that. You can't go 40, 30, 20. You cannot go lower than 50% commitment to your PhD. So that's the amount of time you need to spend. The answer to the placement is yes, in principle, but that's something that you could then discuss once you get the funding with the placement teams, Mark and Jenny, who look after the placements, because we will ask you to explain exactly, what kind of placement you will be making, all that. But these are things that, we will be formulating the details later in the process. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll take one more question and then I'll move on in the interest of time. Ihteram.
Hello, can you hear me,
Yes,
sir?
yes.
So my question is that I have done my master's and I have the research experience in preparing my dissertation, and I've done the quantitative research over there on earning management. So do we need any practical experience later on the research, or is it strict? Is it feasible to submit our proposal only on the basis of that research experience?
No, it's feasible to submit a research proposal only on academic experience. We don't, although we will prepare you for work outside the academia, it's not a requirement when you submit your proposal.
Yeah, because I have worked 3 years in corporate, like I've worked in a bank and I've worked in a US based firm for accounting. So that's my professional experience, and I have my master's dissertation experience in research.
Yeah,
So
we will be asking you to provide that information in the application, and it will be part of the evaluation process. So we do look at academic experience and professional experience, and the panel then decides whether the professional experience has something to do with the proposal and whether it kind of gives us more certainty about the candidate's abilities.
all right, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Right,
thank you.
I'll move on with a couple of the questions from the Q&A, and then I'll move on with the presentation. I recently applied for SENSS CAM. I'm eligible for applying for this student-led competition. Srijita, unless you are a supervisor, you couldn't have applied for SENSS CAM. If you are a supervisor, you're not eligible to apply for the student-led competition because we expect only students to apply for this competition. I'm a second year part-time PhD student. Am I too far into my program to apply? I think the answer is no, because we take into consideration the part-time element of that. So I think there will be, Anne-Louise, there will be a calculation of the amount of time left in the application. And that's something that usually happens at the institutional stage when the institution applies. But I think looking at the dates in principle, you should be able to apply. Do we need any research experience? I think I've answered that already. Slight advantage regarding being a carer, does that include being a mom of a young child? Vivian, the answer is yes. A mom with a young child is a carer, and in your equal opportunities, you will be declaring that. The equal opportunities is confidential. It doesn't go anywhere in the institution. It only remains with SENSS. And this year we have actually asked institutions to carefully consider carers when they nominate candidates with widening participation background. So yes. So Srijita, yes, if the supervisor did the application, that's absolutely fine. You can apply then as a student to the student-led competition. That's my response. Let me move on. I know that there is someone waiting to ask another question. I'll move on a bit with the slides and then effectively return back to questions. So in terms of the proposal, it's important to discuss the proposal with the supervisor. Sometimes there is an interview process at the home institution, which you can then basically incorporate feedback from that in the application you make for SENSS. We have very detailed guidance notes in HI Apply. Please review those. They will answer most, if not all, your questions. So even if you forgot everything I say today, everything I'm saying here is in your guidance notes. And actually, the guidance notes tell you explicitly what to put in each section of the application. And the application has two stages, your application form and the supervisor's statement. They are completed in sequence, so the supervisor cannot submit their statement before you submit your application. Once you submit your application, your supervisor is auto-emailed to request their statement. So bear in mind that unless we receive the supervisor statement, we won't be able to process your application. And this is why I keep saying, talk to the supervisor, identify the supervisor, talk to them, and ensure that you've got a good communication and rapport. But the most important element is focusing on writing a strong proposal. So what are the strong ingredients? What are the essential ingredients of a strong proposal? First of all, the issue. What is the problem yet your research is addressing? And importantly there, how does it tackle sustainability development goals? Is it a project in the global south? What does it offer to society? What is really important about the issue? Then the question is, how are you going to tackle that issue? And the methodology is really important. The methodology should give us confidence that the project is feasible. It's something you could do, and it's something that can achieve its objectives. And then, of course, who's going to benefit? What the research will contribute, whether it will be contributing from an academic point of view or a practical point of view or both. That's really, really important to think about. So research proposal has a strict limit of 10,000 characters, and that includes spaces between words and punctuation. The proposal description, the research background, the questions, methods, schedule of work, all that is included there. Does not include title, does not include abstract, does not include bibliography that are part of a separate section. Okay, and we don't accept footnotes as part of the application form. So that's really important. What the proposal should contain. The first one is description. And if your proposal uses, going back to the question I was asked earlier, if the proposal is using advanced quantitative methods, data skills, you need to explain that in the description. So what we do is, even if people tick the box advanced quantitative methods or data skills, which everybody's open can tick, then they will need to justify in your proposal why it is an AQM, why it's a data skill. We expect you to talk a bit about your background and questions, the research methods you will use, what is your timeline, how do you see the placement fit into that timeline, and then, of course, what is the proposed impact? How do you expect the proposal to change things in the academic world, or change things in practice, or change things in both? Common pitfalls. And I've seen hundreds and hundreds of proposals. I was going to say thousands and thousands of proposals, but I won't make that claim. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of proposals over the years. Typos, please proofread it. Lack of clarity, be clear. Don't go around the point, make the point. Extreme jargon. That's really important, because the thematic panels that they will be reviewing your proposal will be cross-disciplinary. They won't be the people from your own discipline only. They might be people from other disciplines, and you need to explain to them in a clear and without jargon way what the proposal is trying to do. And also sometimes, you submit brief proposals with long references section, which makes us wonder, what's the point of this proposal if there is so much work already that has happened on that area. So how do we assess it? Just to give you a slightly different perspective of what we do and how we do it. There are 5 areas that we use, and apologies for the 4 categories there, it's actually 5. The first one, and the most important one, is quality and feasibility. Is it a good proposal? Is it feasible? That takes 40% of the overall score. Interdisciplinarity. What are the disciplines that your proposal is touching on? That's 10%. What is the impact? That's another 10%. And then 2 more things. Evidence that you are well prepared for undertaking that proposal, and evidence of the quality of the local research environment, including the supervisory expertise. And that 20% predominantly comes from the supervisor statement. So it's really, really important to work with your supervisor in order to get them prepared for writing up that statement. So let me take them in a slightly different way. What does it mean that we need to provide evidence of the quality and feasibility of the proposal? And here I'm including interdisciplinarity and impact potential. It means that we like to see evidence of your ability to design and conduct a strong research project. You've done your literature review, you've done it systematically, you've thought about the methodological approach, you thought about the research plan you will be following, you have certain milestones in that proposal, and also, where do you stand in the current field, and what is the potential impact? In other words, We want to see ideas that are innovative, ideas that stand out. And here, what I need to highlight is that thematic panel reviewers will probably have to read around 30 applications. So you need to make sure that yours stand out. Support, ensure that you have adequately covered the literature. Key up-to-date references should be there. Do not under or over promise. We don't expect a proposal to address all sustainability development goals, but equally, you need to make sure that you provide us with, a proposal that is coherent and doable. And also, appropriate methodology and potentially contingency plan. Just an example there, you planned on interviewing people. You didn't manage to get access to key participants. What? What are you going to do? How are you going to make sure that you complete the PhD? What is your alternative? What is your plan B? So this is really, really, really important. The second part here is evidence that you are prepared. And what we do there is we ask you as part of the application to do a development needs analysis. Tell us about your previous experience, academic and professional, and how that contributes to your preparation for postgraduate study. Also, we look at the way your supervisor has evaluated your suitability and your performance at undergraduate and postgraduate level, if relevant, your relevant professional experience, again, and also we expect to see how the program contributes to your long-term career aims. So what you want to do with the PhD. In simple terms, it's not only the strong proposal, but it's also you need to convince us that you are the right person to take it forward. You have the right skills, the right motives, the right drive to undertake this proposal. And finally, we look at the quality of the local research environment and the supervisory expertise. So will be based on your proposed supervisor's research areas, their knowledge, their expertise, the individual roles they might have, and also your training needs and suggested ways of meeting those training needs. So what is actually happening there and how you've identified those training needs. So it's not only to have a strong proposal, it's not only that you are the right person to do it, but also you and the support team you have around you, the supervisors and the environment, has the expertise and experience that can identify potential training gaps, issues, and they can prepare you for the PhD journey. As part of the application, we also ask you to submit a personal statement, and that brings me back to the initial point. Here is 3.5 characters, the word count. And what we want you to tell us there is why you're applying to SENSS, why you deserve a studentship. The academic interest might be one. Why that university? Why that department? And, why SENSS and not any other DTP? And also, how do you prepare yourself for the postgraduate life? Are you passionate about your topic? Do you know anything about it? There was a question earlier from someone that's currently working in the area. So obviously they have identified the real issue there, and they are willing to explore that and come up with solutions. So this personal statement allows you to provide us any additional information that perhaps you don't know where to put in the form, or you haven't the opportunity to put in the form. We've got, except from the website, there are 2 more additional web pages. One is from a colleague of mine, and the other is from me, how to apply for a PhD funding and how to apply for a PhD in the UK. These are 2 blogs from Kent that are still active. They're there. And if you have academic inquiries, your first point of contact should be your supervisor. If you have asked the supervisor the question and they have said, I don't know that answer, then please ask me. Use my director at senssdtp.ac.uk address. If there are administrative matters, issues with the application platform, eligibility criteria, things like that, please direct those to our admin inbox. The admin inbox is monitored by the whole team. So if you send an email to me with an eligibility question, what I will have to do is I will then have to ask someone else to respond to your question. And that will take time, and occasionally might take critical time. So what I'm asking you to do is, if you have a question that you don't know where to address, send it to the admin, because the people we monitor that inbox, we will be able to divert the question to the most appropriate individual. So really, really important to select carefully, the email that you will be using. Now we've got probably a few more minutes for questions. I don't know whether anybody from the student committee is here. If they are, they can basically tell me, and I can start moving things. Miriam, I think, is here. So let me take a couple of questions on the mic, and then let me also look at whether there are any written questions. So I'll pick up the written one first, and then we'll go to the ones on mic. Is it our responsibility to secure a supervisor? Can we still apply even if we haven't found one? I have reached out to SENSS support team at 3 institutions for assistance in finding a supervisor. Have not received a satisfactory response from any of them. Ebenezer, I'm afraid it is your responsibility to secure a supervisor. You cannot apply if you haven't found one, and you cannot apply because an integral part of the process is the supervisor statement. And therefore it's relatively difficult. What I think is important is to keep on trying with the communication across the 3 institutions already. Sometimes the operational leads or the teams there are quite busy, so you might need to be patient. The competition has just been launched, so they might have received a significant amount of inquiries. So please be patient around that. Will the applicant's lack of published research in a relevant field affect their chances of getting scholarship? Or candidates with published works have a competitive advantage? I don't think that matters. What matters is the proposal. Now, if the published work shows us that someone has skills who can undertake research, it might act as an advantage. But I think it's relatively questionable sometimes, whether someone having a publications gets an advantage in a PhD kind of application process if they don't have a strong proposal. So it's a matter of combination of things. So on their own, they won't give an advantage. If the proposal is not strong enough, if the supervisory team is not strong enough, then it doesn't really matter. We don't require, question is how many letters of references are required? We don't require letters of reference. Check the guidance. The guidance has answers to all these questions. How can we go about providing sound and up-to-date literature for our proposal if we do not have access to sources via an institution? Usually, Google Scholar provides you with access to alternative sources. So most institutions right now will have what we call an institutional depository, where people will have to put their publications in the preprint stage of the actual publication. And this is usually a very good source of finding papers that have been published, but you can't access the publisher, but you can then access a preprint form of that paper through the institutional repository. You said about 700 applications were received last year. Does that mean 700 in total or 700 nomination applications? No, 700 in total. The nominations, so the numbers are roughly 700 in total. We got about 150 nominated, and out of those 150, roughly 60 to 70 reach the management board stage list. And that list is a list that we effectively go down and we allocate studentships. First, AQM, data skills, ring fence to pockets of excellence, widening participation, and then we start going down that list with regards to the remaining candidates. So this is how the numbers to effectively reach the number of 40 to 42 depend on how many how much additional funding we require. So for example, if an application is a 4.5 year with field work, with difficult language training, That's an expensive application. It doesn't really matter in terms of the evaluation. We don't look at that. If you compare that with an application that's 3.5 years with no field work, no additional training. So if I give all the studentships at 3.5 years, I can afford 45. If I start looking at 4.5 years studentships, then the number I can afford goes down. And that means, it fluctuates between 39 and 40 every year. So Nali, thank you very much. I'll hand over in a minute. Again, the English test is tested at the institutional level, not at the SENSS. And that I think addresses the Roehampton University question whether the in-house English test is enough. That's something that is tested at the admission stage at that institution. It's a tricky one. If no supervisor or professor answered my emails, because people have that experience, it is difficult. I don't disagree, but I think what you need to do is you need to expand the net you're looking in terms of supervisors. When is it considered too late? Probably if you haven't found a supervisor by early to mid-December, I think it's probably too late. Perhaps these are questions that you might also put to the student committee because they have gone through the process of securing a studentship. In terms of structure and depth of proposal, what reviewers look for when assessing quality and feasibility? Quality, we look at your positioning in the literature and your ability to identify correctly. If I can summarize and highlight the two most important things, your ability to position yourself in the literature and your ability to then select the most appropriate methodological approach. So these are the two things in terms of the quality. The feasibility, the question is it doable within the time frame of the 3.5 years? So if you have a clear timeline, that timeline gives us assurance and confidence that you will be able to do the PhD. Miriam, with Sonali, I'll hand over in a minute. Secure supervisor, I've managed to secure supervisors both primary and secondary. The primary has agreed to supervise my PhD project. Do I need to the primary supervisor to submit the letter of support for my application? Which other support letter do I need to submit? So there is no letter of support. The letter of support, the supporting statement from the supervisor, it's generated, the request is generated automatically. The supervisor doesn't give you the supporting statement. What happens is once you submit your part of the application on the SENSS, the HI Apply portal, the supervisor gets emailed and then they will then give an access to the portal to submit their part of their application. And yes, the question is whether you will get an email at each stage of the process. The answer is yes, you will get an email at every stage of the process with feedback as to whether you are successful or not. And also feedback why you have been unsuccessful at every stage of the competition. Institutional stage, you will get that feedback from your home institution. At the thematic review stage and the management board stage, you will get that feedback from SENSS. Right, let me just see whether I can, Miriam, Sonali. Sonali, I've given you the allow to talk.
Yes. Can
All
you hear
right,
me?
I'll do that to Miriam. Is that the two of you?
Yes, it's me and Miriam today.
Yes,
Okay.
hi.
Hello. Right. What I suggest is, I think I've answered most of the questions as far as I could. I'm pleased, as part of SENSS, we have a very active student committee with several members, and we thought that this year is going to be quite useful to engage them in the process, because you might want to kind of ask questions that I might not be able to answer, or they have a better experience in terms of their experience. So I think what I'll do is I'll hand over to them. We have other webinars planned over the next few weeks. And if you have questions, you can either submit those questions in advance, or you can come to one of those webinars and ask those questions again as you progress through the process of thinking about the application and everything like that. So don't feel that, oh, I've been to one seminar, I can't go to another one. Feel free to effectively, join as many webinars as you like, and effectively come over and share your questions, and I'll do my best to answer those. So what I'll do is I'll stop sharing now.